Imagine a grandparent looks your child in the eye on their birthday and tells them they don't have a real future. Do you stay silent to keep the peace? Or do you burn it all down to protect your child's spirit? Hey everyone, it's Sarah. I want to talk about the moment my home stopped feeling like a sanctuary and started feeling like a courtroom where my daughter was constantly on trial. It all came to a head at a 16th birthday party, a huge celebration for my daughter, Lily, and her two cousins. My mother-in-law, Patricia, stood before them, holding two lavishly wrapped, identical boxes. She presented them to my nephew and niece with a grand speech about investing in the next generation. Then my daughter, Lily, her eyes shining with hope, asked where her gift was. Patricia looked at my artistic, brilliant child with an expression of pity and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, honey, these are for children with real futures." A future, in her eyes, that didn't involve art. She didn't just deny my daughter a gift, she denied her worth, right in front of everyone she loved. That single sentence started a war, and it ended with a quiet, digital revenge she never saw coming. If you've ever had to defend your child's dreams against a family member's judgment, hit that like button. Let's show the world that a creative path is a real future too. This all unfolded in a wealthy suburb of Denver, where success was often measured by your proximity to the tech industry. My husband, Mark, is a software engineer, steady, kind, and conflict-averse to a fault. I'm a freelance writer and illustrator, a career I built from our home so I could always be there for our daughter, Lily. Our family was the creative one. Mark's brother, David, and his wife, Karen, a high-powered corporate lawyer, were the successful ones. Their twins, Mason and Mia, were enrolled in coding boot camps before they could drive and had investment portfolios managed by their dad. My mother-in-law, Patricia, made it painfully clear which family she valued more. She would praise Mason's stock picks at the dinner table but dismiss Lily's award-winning paintings as a cute hobby. She saw Karen's 60-hour work weeks as ambition, but my flexible, work-from-home career as a sign that I wasn't serious about life. In Patricia's black and white world, art was frivolous, and only STEM careers were a measure of a child's potential. We lived in a community obsessed with innovation and progress, yet my mother-in-law was trapped in an archaic mindset where a paintbrush would always be worth less than a line of code. It was a quiet judgment that simmered under the surface of every family gathering, a constant, unspoken ranking of our children's worth. If you've ever felt like your passions or your career were dismissed by your family as just a hobby, type your passion in the comments. Whether it's writing, art, music, or anything else, let's celebrate it right here. 2 years before the infamous birthday party, Patricia moved in with us. Her husband had passed, and she sold her house, tearfully telling us that medical debts had wiped her out. Her only income, she claimed, was a meager Social Security check that barely covered her medications. Mark, with his big heart, immediately offered her our guest suite. "It's what family does," he said. So I welcomed her. I repainted the room, her favorite shade of sage green. I learned how she liked her coffee. I listened to her endless stories. But her humble facade started showing cracks almost immediately. She'd complain about our frugal grocery budget, but would have packages delivered from high-end department stores, waving them off as gifts from old friends. She spent hours locked in her room, the rapid-fire clicking of her keyboard echoing down the hall. When I'd ask, she'd say she was keeping up with church emails or researching genealogy. The oddest part was her secrecy around her finances. She refused to let us help set up her online banking and would angle her phone away if I walked by while she was using an app that made a distinct cha-ching sound. It was a sound I, as a freelancer, knew well the sound of a payment notification. But I dismissed my suspicions. I told myself I was being paranoid, that she was a grieving widow adjusting to a new life. I chose to believe the story she was telling us, never imagining she was running a secret, thriving business right under our roof, using our internet, and living on our dime. The idea for the joint birthday party was, of course, Patricia's. Lily was turning 16, a milestone in America known as the Sweet 16. The twins, Mason and Mia, were turning 17, close enough to combine. Patricia framed it as a grand, generous gesture. "Let's throw them a party to celebrate them, stepping into the future," she announced one Sunday dinner. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and it masked her true intentions perfectly. She insisted on a lavish theme, booking a modern event space in downtown Denver. She also made a very public declaration. "I've been saving for months," she said, dabbing a strategic tear from her eye. "I want to give my grandchildren a true generational gift, something to launch them into their tech-driven futures. This won't just be a present, it will be an investment in their potential." Mark was moved by her supposed sacrifice. David and Karen were thrilled, already speculating about what the gifts could be. Even I was cautiously optimistic, hoping this was a sign Patricia was finally ready to embrace all her grandchildren equally. Lily was ecstatic. She spent weeks designing the digital invitations herself, a beautiful, animated piece of art that showcased her incredible talent. She talked endlessly about what the generational gift could be. "Maybe it's a new drawing tablet, Mom. Like a professional one," she'd whisper at night, her eyes full of hope. I saw her hope, and I chose to believe in it with her, ignoring the little voice in my head that knew my mother-in-law's generosity always came with strings attached and a very specific, exclusionary agenda. If this story hit you hard, don't forget to hit that like button. It tells the algorithm these stories matter, and it tells me to keep going. As the party planning ramped up, Patricia's secret life in her room became more pronounced. Packages arrived almost daily, some from art supply wholesalers, others from antique dealers. I once saw a box labeled 18th century sterling silver before she snatched it and hurried to her room. Her excuse was always the same: just helping a friend from church sell some of her late husband's things. The screen of her laptop, which she guarded like a dragon, was always filled with high-resolution photos of jewelry, vintage lace, and ornate picture frames. My suspicion grew into a quiet certainty. As a writer, I spend my days doing research, and my curiosity finally got the better of me. One afternoon, while she was out for her doctor's appointment, I did a reverse image search on a photo of a unique locket I'd seen on her screen. The search led me directly to an Etsy store called Patty's Precious Past. It was a treasure trove of high-end antiques and vintage jewelry. The store had over 3,000 sales and a perfect 5-star rating. I scrolled through the reviews, my heart pounding. Patricia is a dream to work with. Shipped my Victorian brooch immediately. Another read: the quality is museum-worthy. Will be buying again. The dates on the reviews stretched back 2 years to the exact month she moved in with us, claiming to be destitute. She wasn't just couponing. She was running a highly profitable, full-time online business from my guest room, using our address, our internet, and our electricity, all while playing the part of the poor, dependent widow. The day of the party arrived, and the event space was buzzing with energy. Lily was radiant, flitting between friend groups, her laughter echoing. She'd spent a week creating a digital art display that was projected onto a large screen, a stunning portfolio of her work that earned gasps of admiration from guests. For a moment, watching her shine, I let myself believe that Patricia wouldn't dare ruin this. But then came the gift ceremony. Patricia took the microphone, her voice resonating with false emotion. "To prepare my grandchildren for the future," she announced, "I wanted to give them the best tools for success." She presented Mason and Mia with 2 enormous, sleek boxes. They tore them open to reveal top-of-the-line Alienware gaming laptops, each worth over $3,000, along with all expenses-paid passes to the Adobe MAX Creativity Conference in Los Angeles. The room erupted in gasps. The twins were ecstatic, hugging a beaming Patricia. Then, all eyes turned to Lily. She stood there, her smile faltering, waiting. "Grandma?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Patricia turned to her, her own smile tightening into something cold. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, flat gift card envelope. "And for you, dear," she said, handing it to Lily. It was a $50 gift card to a local craft store. "I know how you enjoy your little hobbies." Then came the final, devastating blow. She leaned in and whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "The real gifts are for children with real futures." Humiliation washed over Lily's face. She didn't cry, she just stood there, clutching the gift card, her digital art still glowing on the screen behind her. A testament to a future her own grandmother refused to see. The party ended abruptly, the air thick with unspoken discomfort. Lily held herself together with a grace that broke my heart, thanking her friends for coming while avoiding eye contact with everyone else. The car ride home was silent, the expensive laptops in the backseat radiating a toxic energy. As soon as we got inside, Lily fled to her room. Mark, for the first time, looked truly shaken out of his peacemaking stupor. He followed me into the kitchen, his face pale. "I can't believe she did that," he whispered. In front of everyone. Later, I went to talk to Patricia. I found her in her room, already listing a new antique brooch on her Etsy store. "That was cruel, Patricia," I said, my voice shaking with rage. She didn't even look up from her laptop. "The world is a competitive place, Sarah. I'm simply preparing Lily for the reality that a career in art is a fantasy. It's tough love." "That wasn't tough love," I shot back. "That was a public execution of a child's spirit. You did it to hurt her and to hurt me." She finally met my gaze, her eyes cold and hard. "Maybe if you had a real job, you'd understand the importance of a practical future. You encourage her fantasies. Someone has to be the adult in the room." The gaslighting was so profound, so shameless, that it almost took my breath away. She had twisted her cruelty into a noble act of pragmatism, positioning me, Lily's own mother, as the one doing her harm. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting for my daughter's feelings. I was fighting against a warped reality that my mother-in-law had spent years constructing, a world where our worth was nothing more than a number on a paycheck. If you have ever been gaslit by a family member who twisted their cruelty into just being honest or wanting what's best for you, just type the current time where you are. Let's create a timestamp of the moment we all recognize that manipulation for what it is. That night, after Mark had fallen into a troubled sleep, I sat at my desk, Patricia's dismissive words echoing in my head. "Maybe if you had a real job." The tough love excuse. It was the same justification she'd used for years, and I was done accepting it. Fueled by a cold, quiet rage I hadn't felt in years, I opened my laptop. It was time to stop fighting her narrative and start building my own, based on undeniable facts. My digital investigation began. I wasn't a hacker, I was just a meticulous researcher. I started with her Etsy store, Patty's Precious Past. I cross-referenced her product photos with online auction house records, discovering she was buying low and selling high with an incredible profit margin. Then, I found her on a forum for antique resellers, where she used a pseudonym. Under that name, she wasn't a poor widow. She was a savvy businesswoman boasting about her success. I found one post that made my blood run cold. "My secret is overhead," she wrote. "I live rent-free with my son, a real soft touch. He and his wife cover all my living expenses, which leaves my entire six-figure annual profit free and clear for reinvestment and gifts for the important grandchildren. 6 figures. Annually. While living in my house, eating our food, and telling us she could barely afford her prescriptions. This wasn't just a side hustle. This was a calculated, long-term deception. My revenge wouldn't be yelling or crying. It would be a quiet, factual expose. I downloaded every forum post, every sales record, and every glowing review. I compiled it all into a single, devastating PowerPoint presentation, complete with financial charts. The quiet writer she'd always dismissed was about to present the story of her life, and it was a story of pure, unadulterated fraud. A few days later, I called the family summit. I told Mark's brother, David, and his wife, Karen, that we needed to discuss Patricia's living situation and well-being. They arrived at our house with an air of weary obligation, clearly expecting to mediate another sensitive family dispute. I had them all gather in the living room. Patricia sat in the armchair, adopting her most frail, victimized posture. Mark sat beside me on the couch, tense but resolute. I started calmly, recounting the events of the birthday party. I described the devastating impact Patricia's words had on Lily, who had since retreated into herself, her sketchbook lying untouched. Karen sighed impatiently. "Sarah, are we really doing this again? Mom can be blunt, we all know that. But she's from a different generation." She was trying to give Lily a reality check. David nodded in agreement. "She's worried about Lily's future. It comes from a place of love, even if it's clumsy." Patricia dabbed a tearless eye. "I just want what's best for her," she whispered. They were closing ranks, falling back into their familiar roles. Patricia, the misunderstood matriarch, Karen and David, the defenders of tradition, and me, the overly sensitive, dramatic daughter-in-law. I let them finish building their wall of denial. I let them paint me as the villain. Then, I picked up the remote for the television. "You're right," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You should be worried about your mother, but not for the reasons you think." If you have ever been in a room where everyone else has agreed on a version of reality that completely erases your own experience, hit that subscribe button. This space is for seeing the truth, even when you're the only one holding the camera. I pressed a button on the remote, and the 75-inch screen on the wall flickered to life. The first slide of my presentation appeared, the homepage of Patty's Precious Past, featuring a beautifully photographed Victorian locket. Patricia's face went white. David and Karen stared, confused. "What is this?" Karen asked. "That," I said, clicking to the next slide, "is your mother's highly successful online business. The one she's been running out of my guest room for the last 2 years." I clicked again. A screenshot of a sales dashboard showing over 3,000 transactions. Click. A page of glowing 5-star reviews. Click. A financial chart I had created, estimating her annual profit to be well over $100,000, tax-free, since she was clearly not reporting it. The room was utterly silent, except for the soft clicks of the remote. Then came the finale. I displayed the forum post, her own words highlighted in yellow. "My secret is overhead. I live rent-free with my son, a real soft touch, leaving my entire 6-figure annual profit free and clear. For gifts for the important grandchildren." I let the words hang in the air. Karen slowly turned to her mother-in-law, her lawyer-like composure completely gone, replaced by a look of dawning horror and disgust. "Mom?" she whispered. "Is this true?" Patricia, for the first time in her life, was speechless. The carefully constructed image of the poor, dependent widow, the misunderstood matriarch who only wanted what was best, had been systematically and publicly dismantled. My revenge wasn't loud. It was a presentation. A quiet, factual, digital execution of a lifetime of lies. This wasn't one of those explosive family revenge stories with yelling and screaming. It was colder, sharper, and far more devastating. The silence in the room was a living thing, heavy and suffocating. David and Karen stared at their mother not with anger, but with a kind of stunned, horrified disbelief. Patricia just sat there, deflated, her entire persona stripped away, leaving only a pale, frightened woman. She had no defense. The evidence was right there, glowing on the screen in front of her. Mark finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a final judgment. "Mom, how could you lie to us like this? For 2 years?" She just shook her head, unable to form words. I stood up, my part in the presentation over. "So," I said, addressing David and Karen directly, "your mother is not destitute. She is a very successful, secret entrepreneur, which means she has options." I walked over to the coffee table and placed 2 documents on it. "Option 1, I said, pointing to the first, is a printout of the top-rated independent senior living apartments in Denver, all of which she can comfortably afford. Option 2, I continued, pointing to the second, is that she moves in with you. The choice is yours. But her time in our home is over." I then turned to Patricia. "You have 24 hours to pack your things." Karen, the pragmatic lawyer, recovered first. She looked at her husband, then at the financial summary on the screen, then back at her mother-in-law. "She'll stay with us tonight," Karen said, her voice clipped and businesslike. "And tomorrow we will be helping her find her own apartment." There was no negotiation, no tearful pleading. I hadn't just exposed a lie. I had presented a problem with a clear, logical solution that even they couldn't argue with. I hadn't just won an argument. I had taken back control of my home and my life. Patricia left the next day. There were no dramatic goodbyes, just a quiet, efficient removal of her belongings, orchestrated by a grim-faced Karen. As the door closed behind her for the last time, it felt like our house took its first deep breath in 2 years. The oppressive atmosphere of judgment lifted instantly. That evening, the 3 of us ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor, something we hadn't done in years. Lily laughed, a real, unburdened laugh, and started sketching for the first time since the party. Our home was ours again. This journey taught me a painful but powerful lesson. The most potent form of revenge isn't about inflicting pain, it's about reclaiming your peace. It's about using truth not as a weapon to wound, but as a tool to dismantle a toxic reality. My revenge was a PowerPoint presentation. It was a boundary. It was the quiet click of a door closing on a relationship that was no longer welcome in my home. My daughter's worth was never up for debate, and her future, filled with art and creativity, is as real and as valid as any other. We cannot force others to see our value, but we can, and we must, refuse to live in the shadow of their narrow-mindedness. We must build our homes into sanctuaries where our children's spirits are nurtured, not judged. If you have ever had to fight for your own worth, or the worth of your child, this space is for you. Subscribe and join a community that knows that sometimes the most loving act is to protect your family from your family.